Show. This is episode 890, alongside with one of my co-hosts, Lyons, for the show. And we're joined by a really special guest, our friend Alex Silvestro. He's a former NFL defensive end, Super Bowl champ. He played for Rutgers for college. He played for the New England Patriots and the Baltimore Ravens. And he's from Paulsboro, New Jersey. Really looking to have him on the show. Obviously, we met him in person during a football event in Paulsboro. So first of all, Alex, thank you for joining. We finally made this happen. And how are you and your family doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me. Everyone's doing well. Like I said, I had the baby sleeping upstairs earlier, but wife's at work, and I'm kind of upset right now because the Rutgers game just got postponed to Saturday.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yes, we are navigating after a storm in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Alex, tell us about your start in football and how everything started for you.
So I think for me, pretty much, I grew up in Gibbstown, which goes to Paulsboro High School. They had a just standard first grade. My dad always liked football, and it's kind of one of the things like, hey, you want to start playing football? I said, all right, sure. So, my dad pretty much said anything. I just said, yeah, I'll do it. And that's around the first grade mark is when I started, football. I also did wrestling and baseball all at the same time. So
nice. Wow.
So while growing up in New Jersey, what was it like growing up in New Jersey? And who was did you have that one role model that you looked up to while growing up in football?
Not too much. I did come from a pretty good high school, and my dad was always big with going to the high school games. So for us, I always used to watch people before me. So there was a lot of good players that came before me, like Mike Mendenhall, Troy Bennett, Isaac Redmond, I think was on your show earlier.
Yeah.
All these guys were really even the assistant coach Kevin Harvey. I used to go to games back then and watch them play a whole bunch. Growing up in my area, it's funny. I ended up like I said, I went to Rutgers, but there was Rutgers really wasn't on the map for football then. They were kind of if you were from South Jersey, you didn't really talk about Rutgers. You would even talk even more, about Temple, Penn State, Virginia, Maryland, pretty much all these other surrounding, states and schools, and Rutgers was kind of always left out. So it's funny, looking back, I really didn't even know Rutgers as a football team, not until high school when my coach ended up getting there, Shiano.
Yeah, and it was such a special thing to meet you at Paulsboro and to hear about the greatness of that school. We're definitely going to stop by for some games. Mm-hmm. It seems like the making of legends over there. What's going on, and what was that like? Was there any pressure? Was it just yeah, we're Paulsboro? I mean, Isaac said they shoveled the field in a snowstorm.
Yeah, so that was actually before me, but yeah, that was around his time. They did do that, and I was against, I believe it was Woodbury. I'm trying to remember. I think that was a Woodbury game. I can't quite remember. It was a couple years before me, but yeah, they shoveled the field. I mean, we had, you were pretty much known when you went to Paulsboro that you were going to be one of the better teams in your conference and in South Jersey Group 1.
Yeah,
always had a tough rivals with Woodbury. Stuff like that. There's even Glassboro. We would always play against them. And it's funny because we're both smaller schools. And, I know Paulsboro, I think now is only graduating 100 kids. And yet they still produce good players, good talent. And last year they won the championship. So it's funny. It just kind of continues each year with only that many kids that come through the school. So it's pretty impressive, to be honest. And I think a lot has to go with the area, the type of kids we have, and then plus we have good coaching. So I also want to Coach Glenn Howard's a phenomenal coach. He should be either in college or the NFL, question. But he just wanted to stay. He wanted to stay in Paulsboro. So it's a small town guy. It's funny. I actually had sat with Joe Paterno, and he was recruiting me at the time, and he had told a story about him. He goes, yeah, I was recruiting Coach Howard back in the day, and he told me no then as a player, and he ended up going to Minnesota. Then he goes, I tried recruiting him as a coach, years later, and he told me no then too. He goes, I don't know what it is. I guess he just didn't want to play for him. Is kind of how he said it. But for him, he just, I don't know. He was a small town guy. He ended up going up to Minnesota and came back and just kind of stuck around. And it's perfect for him because it's a lot of time, and he puts a lot of time into the program. So
Absolutely. And what was his coaching style like? Was he aggressive? What was he like?
He can get aggressive, but he's more laid back. He's very relaxed and mellow. He gets a little emotional here and there, but he's, for the most part, he is more like, calm. And when he starts yelling, that's when you know there's a real problem, because he's more laid back on, for the most part. But he's very, I don't know how to explain, but he's a very good, just calm guy. He's polite. He's nice. He's like the nicest guy you'll ever meet. And it doesn't really change too much, even with football, which is kind of funny, because usually you have people on the field that could be a little different than how they are off the field. So
exactly. And we swear there's something in the water, because it's like you guys are all champs. It's like from there.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't recommend, if you're not from there, drinking the water too much.
Yeah. Yeah, so speaking of Paulsboro High School, what was it playing there? And obviously they have a great tradition, and obviously you just brought up Glenn Howard, Coach Glenn Howard, and like you said, he deserves to be in the college football game or NFL. He's a heck of a coach. And but for you, what was it like playing there? And obviously, did you get to play any other positions before settling on defensive end?
Yeah, so I mean, for most of my football playing career, I played either tight end or DN, with a little bit of a variation. Like every once in a while, I play a little bit of fullback, or whatever you want to call it, plus, like DN, I played a little bit of outside linebacker. Believe it or not, I was actually the punter in high school too. Like I said, small school, you got to play as many positions as you can. So, so I played, DN, outside linebacker there, and then tight end. But I also was the punter as well. I just like playing. I didn't like coming off the field. I think I literally was only off the field in high school for kickoff and kick return. That was pretty much it. So that was my breather. Then the rest was get back on the field. So.
Alex, what position did you like playing the most, and what is it that you love about football most?
So I like playing defense better than offense. I actually, when I was getting in the recruiting process, I had schools look at me for both tight end and DN. I still was interested in the schools that liked me for tight end, but I always wanted to play defense. It's kind of where, felt more my heart was. It's just funner to hit people than get hit. Is how I always explained it to people. Which is funny, because later in the NFL, I ended up getting moved. Belichick ended up moving me from defensive end to tight end. So, after my first year in the NFL, they had moved me from DN to tight end. So, which is also unique as well. But I always like playing defense. It's fun. Don't get me wrong, offense is really fun too. It's great when you go up and catch a ball and you can run someone over. That stuff's fun. But hitting someone, I always enjoyed that a little bit better. So it's kind of what always drew me a little bit closer, more to defense, I guess. But.
And what's your favorite thing about football?
So I did play 3 sports, baseball and wrestling and football. So I don't know, ever since the beginning, I always liked football the best. I don't know. I can't explain it. It's just something about it. It was, and I love playing, wrestling and baseball as well. But it was just something about football. I don't know what it was. Maybe the team aspect, which I know they also have their own team aspect. But, in wrestling, at least you can have an individual, and same with baseball. If you're a pitcher, you can go out and throw, So there's football, you can dominate a game and still end up losing the game. So it's, I guess the team aspect, like I said, the more physical the sport I always enjoyed. And there's just something about it. I just loved it from the beginning. So it was football from pretty much first grade.
Nice. Something about that fall football.
Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah, so take us through your recruiting process from high school to college, because obviously you got to stay near home, and you got recruited by Joe Paterno and Greg Schiano, obviously. And before choosing Rutgers, how many more other offers did you get? And then what made you choose Rutgers, and what was it like just staying close to home?
So for me, during the recruiting process, and even like I said, I even actually had people reach out to me for wrestling, believe it or not, too. But from the beginning, I just told them that, football, I ended up getting scholarships for football after my sophomore year, I believe. So pretty early on. So I ended up it was Duke and Rutgers were my first 2 offers.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, both of them actually had pretty bad seasons the year before, believe it or not. Obviously, everyone knows Duke has great education. Shadow is kind of, he's been there for a couple of years, but they haven't really broke through yet and started winning a couple games. So they were my first two offers. And it wasn't until after my junior year, I think I ended up having a total of 8 offers.
Yeah.
Or sorry, 10 offers.
Wow.
So I had a total of 10. And I narrowed it down. Like I liked Iowa. I'm trying to think. I had Minnesota. I had Cincinnati. I had Michigan State, Rutgers, Duke, Temple, Tennessee.
Wow.
I'm missing some here. But so like, yeah, so I had 2 more. I'll think of them as we go along. But I narrowed it down. I was like West Virginia. I did like Iowa and obviously Rutgers. So they were kind of how I narrowed it down. I ended up taking only 2 official visits, 1 to Rutgers and 1 to West Virginia. The problem with the official visits for me was they were during wrestling season, which kind of stunk because I didn't want to really miss. And they always do them on the weekends, and we'd have our bigger matches and tournaments on the weekend, so I didn't want to miss any of that. So I kind of like worked around to where I only went to the 2, but I ended up working out pretty well still. But yeah, that was a big part. I have a pretty close family, so for me, one of the things that I wanted to do was not go too far away from home. So most of the schools, like even I named, were a little bit closer, which made it easier, obviously, for them to go to games and stuff like that. And I was more of I know now you see people commit early to schools. I waited a little bit. I wasn't until, might have been after my senior year of football, which is like unheard of now. I know now people, they verbally commit, before their junior season starts or whatever, or after that. But for me, it was, I waited till after my football season. And I think a large part of it was just, it kind of actually helped me choose Rutgers as well because, one, they were the closest school. They do have really good academics. And then that year they ended up going 11-2, and they ended up losing to, that was when they had the Pandemonium Piscataway, when they beat Louisville, who was like the second ranked or third ranked team in the country. They ended up beating them on a Thursday night. So to me, that was like, man, it's really, when Shannon was coming down and talking to me, I really believed it. So it made it easier for me to just be like, this school, what he's saying is true. I watched them go from the year before that was 7-5, and the year before that, I think they went below 500. I can't remember now, but I just remember watching them as they kept climbing better and better, in the win column. And I go, this school really has everything that I kind of, that I want in a school now. So that kind of was the big, I guess, turning point, which was maybe that was some of the reason I waited too, because I kind of wanted them to pull through, and they did, which made it, made my decision easier at the time. So.
That's awesome.
So all that,
and share
there's
with
a whole
us.
bunch of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good when that happens, because when you get so many offers, I'm sure it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, it can be. I knew I didn't want to go too far out. I think the driving radius we tried to stay was within 5 hours. Now, don't get me wrong. I didn't, like I said, like Iowa and stuff, and you would have to fly to them. But
yeah,
it was, to me, kind of wanted to stay in that 5-hour radius, and that's kind of what narrowed it down to those schools, I guess.
Well, I'm just curious, but Joe Paterno, did he give you an offer?
So they actually did not. They were taught. So I met them a couple of times. I did like a junior day, like a daily camp with them and stuff like that. And that was when I sat in the office with them after. And they were like, oh, we really liked you, this, and that. And it's, I actually do remember when I did it, because they're like, well, what positions do you play? Because I was a lighter defensive end. I was only maybe, I wrestled 215. So during the football season, my senior, junior year, I might have only been 220, maybe 225.
Still, wow.
So I wasn't that, so I wasn't that heavy. Well, in comparison, coming out, what you see now. So, and I would always get down to 215 for wrestling. So they're
That's
like, well,
amazing,
what positions do you
that
play?
you
So I
would
remember
go
I
back
tried,
and forth.
so I would try. Well, it was easy.
Wow.
Wrestling's so hard. Like when you practice, it's way harder to practice than football. I would drop to 10 pounds in the first week without even trying. So
wow.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah. So
every woman jealous right now.
We would. Well, I can't do it now. So I've coached Paul Pro Wrestling, and I still don't lose the 10 pounds every time. So I don't know what happened then versus now. So
yeah.
But yeah. So I mean they were like, well, what positions can you play? So my body's type was more like tight end. So I remember I tried out for there was like 4 positions they made me do. There was outside linebacker, DN, tight end, and then they did like an H back or like a U tight end type deal, like a second tight end, fullback kind of hybrid role. And then I remember I did all that, and like I sat there and they're like, well, how's your hands? And I sat there and was like, yeah, I can catch. So the guy like, I don't want to know if I want to say all the names now. It's a lot of these guys got in trouble after the whole thing, but I remember he sat there and was, just rifling balls at me. And I called like, 20. It's like, all right, turn this way and catch. All right, turn around. And when I say ball, turn around and catch it. And like, I caught and he's rifling them at me. By the time they're like here, when I turn around, I still would catch every single. I caught everyone. He goes, okay, that's pretty good. So I get back in the office and I go, well, we didn't really hear you too much, and I think it was a lot of like they just kind of were trying to cover themselves, but it was a little bit of a BS, best way to put it. So kind of rubbed me the wrong way with Penn State, which is fine. They got what they deserved.
That's great.
You're a success.
Yeah.
You're a success story, and everything happens for a reason. And you kicked it. You excelled.
Yeah.
Tell us about the exciting draft experience too.
So mine was unique. Yeah. Coming out, my year was the year of the lockout. So I didn't redshirt at Rutgers. I came straight out. 4 years and done. I actually had classes in the spring and in the summer. So I did a whole bunch of classes while I was training up there, which worked out nice because I stayed local to train. Give me 1 second real quick.
Baby must be up.
No. Well, my wife's coming in real quick, so she wanted to drop something off. So, well, baby's not up yet, but the door was locked. I didn't want the dog to. How the baby is.
Tell her we said
hi. Anyway. So we where were we at here? So
the draft process.
Day. So my year was a lockout. Yeah. So I didn't redshirt. I came out. So I still had classes, which worked well for me because I actually wanted to work out still at Rutgers. They had a guy who, when they did their pro day and stuff, he did a really good job. Bob Gilmartin, the guy was the best with, like, in my opinion, when I would watch people when they went away, when they stayed in, the people that actually stayed in, I thought it didn't do as well, did better. So to me, it was an easy decision to stay there and train, which worked out because I also had classes and when you're done, graduate. So training, did all that stuff. They did the draft, but there was no free agency. I like to tell people I was drafted in the 8th round, which is, I was an undrafted free agent. I didn't get picked up in the draft. So after the draft, I had no clue what was going on. So I stayed up there. I kept training. This is all after the pro day, obviously, and everything like that. So I just kept training. They ended up deciding the lockout. I'm trying to remember. It might have been like 2 days before we reported to camp. And next thing you know, we fielded between me and my agent a whole bunch of calls. So the only good thing with being undrafted versus being drafted in the 7th round is you kind of get an option of where you want to go. Versus, if you're drafted, you pretty much have to go there. Or you have to go there. Whereas if you're an undrafted free agent, you kind of, it's almost like you're getting recruited again. So, they go back and you kind of look through. For me, it was deciding on between the Giants and New England. I actually, believe it or not, was out bowling with my friends the night before. We used to always go on so I guess it had to have been a Monday night. We used to always go for Monday night. It was like, cheap hot dogs, cheap beers, cheap games. So we'd always go. It was like $1 for everything. So we did that. And I remember that's when it started getting calls. And I'm like, oh, well, so I got to go. So I ended up deciding where I was going to go New England over the Giants. The reason being, at the time, the Giants had, and I came out as a DN. The Giants had Michael Strahan was still there. They had, I think JPP came out the same time as me.
Oh, Jason.
So, or he was a year later. But they had OC Usmanura, and they had Tuck. So I'm like, okay, they have an amazing defensive line. It's probably not the best, but outside that, the numbers, they didn't have that many people, 2s or 3s, to fill in. But they had, their beginning lineup was absolutely stacked.
Right.
Whereas I looked at New England, they only had I think it was 3 DNs on the roster at the time. And I'm like, all right, so that kind of works a little better for me. So I ended up deciding to go to New England. They also gave me the highest signing bonus, which wasn't anything crazy when you're in the 8th round. So ended up choosing New England. I remember I got a call, I think it was like 9:30 in the morning the next day, and they were like, yeah, all right, so we're reporting for camp today. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it kind of just had, like, I remember just throwing every gym. I had one bag. I wish I would have packed more. I threw just a whole bunch of gym shorts and t-shirts, camp gear. You just wear the easiest stuff possible.
Yeah.
And I remember throwing it all in the bag, and they're like, can you be here by like 2? Well, he told me reporting today just to get ready. I think by the time she called back, it was like 10:30. Like, can you be here by 2? I remember looking at my GPS. I'm like, it's not going to even show me to get there until like 2:30. And she's like, that's fine. She goes, this has been the biggest mess because there was no spring ball or anything like that this year because of the lockout. So they were just throwing things together. I mean, it was probably, I can see it being a total mess there because the lockout had just ended. And I remember making it to camp. And the funny part about my decision was going to New England. There wasn't that many defensive ends. I'll never forget. I think there was about 16 defensive ends on the roster by the time I got there. So I'm sitting here.
Yeah.
And as an undrafted free agent coming out of college, you are the lowest on the totem pole, or the highest on the totem pole, whatever way you want to look at it. I was down at I was all the way in the back. And I kind of remember going through camp. I would beat a person out, and they would literally cut the person behind me. So that happened like 3 times because there, that was a ton of people on the roster. But that year was also pretty wild because, like I said, there was no spring. So a lot of this happens in the spring. They can bring them in then. They can kind of see if they fit for the team or not, and they'll make cuts then. Well, there was none of that. So they were bringing people in through camp and cutting people a lot worse. I was at 3 camps, and that was by far the worst training camp. I ended up having 3 roommates myself that year. That's how insane it was from people getting cut and just trying to make roster moves to make it work. But it was a unique year. So my experience.
That's incredible to get.
A lot different.
Go ahead.
Yeah, my experience was a lot different than I believe other people, just because of that lockout made it a lot worse and all that.
Yeah. But how awesome to be bowling with your friends and get the calls.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I do remember I was like, and I remember I came back in and just before I told them, like, come on, man, it's your turn. We've been waiting for you. And I'm getting yelled at. How standard friends are, making funny and stuff like that. And I'm like, dude, I ended up just getting signed with the Patriots. Is kind of how I told them. They're going, oh, that's awesome. So then we ended up, they're like, and that was, which was crazy as well, because I knew that they said camp would start tomorrow. So I'm like, all right, they're all like, let's go get drunk. And I'm like, yeah, I gotta actually go to camp tomorrow. Like, yeah.
Oh my gosh,
I can't actually drink.
Day.
So it was literally the next day. So it was that night. That's when I woke up the next morning. Yeah, it was insane. So I woke up the next morning. That's when I got the call at 9:30. They're like, all right, get ready, and we'll give you the call and the final details of where to go, where to hotel, and stuff like that. So
wow, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's like an emotional bench press. Showing up on the scene in your car.
Yeah, never even had a chance to think about it. It was just like, hey, can you get here? I'm like, yeah, by the time I end up driving there, because it's probably about 4.5, 5 hours. And it's the absolute worst drive from South Jersey to Foxborough, because you got to go through the whole state of New Jersey, New York, even Connecticut. I mean, it's just traffic the whole way. So and then you get to Providence every time. So it is literally the worst drive. I would actually prefer to fly. I know it's that short of a distance, but it was such a pain. Just the traffic.
I can only imagine. I used to live in New York. I know. I can't imagine. And then showing up and it's already started and you're like, I'm ready to play.
Yeah. So you show up. Well, so what they ended up doing was they just got you there. You checked in. They made you check into the hotel first. Actually, I don't remember. I think you might have checked into the facility, which is in New England. It's nice because you are actually at the stadium. Like a lot of people have their practice facilities outside and in the stadiums. Like New England, just because it's in a small little town, it's really nice because you're right there the whole time. So it's really convenient. Like you don't have to go to multiple places. So that made it a lot better. But I think you checked in there. They got you all situated, told you where to go, and then you had to report back at night. Might have just one meeting was like all it was, just because people were still flying in from all over the country and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's an interesting draft story right there. That's a good thing that you didn't drink the day before, because
that's what I said. I kind of knew it was happening. Well, I knew it was happening soon. So I was like, let me just, and that night it's funny because normally we'd have a couple beers while we bowl. I'm like, let me just, I'll just have a hot dog and just, whatever. And it's funny because that ended up, it happened that, it was happening. They were talking about discussions about the lockout ending and everything like that. And you're just like, oh, it's got to be soon. Like, they're not going to miss football. It's football. It's, it's football. They're going to have a season. They're going to make things happen. And, it ended up kind of going nuts. Believe it or not, I remember when we were there, Kraft was a big part of getting it done. Yeah. And his wife had just passed. Oh. And everyone thought they would postpone meetings because, but he ended up like gutting it out, going to the meetings. He's like, I want to get this done so we can get, football going too. So.
That's hard.
So yeah, but it was very, very unique and interesting times that lockout. So that was my experience.
That's crazy. Yeah,
that's a great story.
Very very quick turnaround there. Yeah. So
and to be able to get through that and get to your goal, that's amazing. And this is a two-part question, and because obviously I found an interesting story when you were at the Patriots, but first, when you go into the locker room, when you get into training camp that day, when you see players like Tom Brady, Deion Branch, Wes Walker, Vince Wilfork, Rob Ninkovich, I can go down the list. Albert Hainsworth, who I had on the show before recently, he was on the show. Gerard Mayo, Brandon Spikes, Kyle Arrington, Devin McCourty, man, the McCourty twins, Rob Gronkowski. I can go down the list. What was it like seeing that type of players and playing with them? And also, the next part, they made you play tight end at training camp, I heard. What was that like?
So a couple things with that. So we had, first of all, Dev McCourty made it easy because I played with him at Rutgers. So I knew him pretty well. Oh, cool. So that was one of the people like you came out and you knew. So that was awesome. But I do remember the first week of training camp kind of being like, maybe it was the first week, first 3 or 4 days, something like that. You're kind of like, wow, it's like, you're sitting there like, that's Tom Brady. I'm in the locker room with Tom Brady and stuff like that. Like, oh, that's Gronk. And you're sitting here looking around, you're like, I remember watching these guys on TV, like, this is insane. Like, I'm in the same locker room as them. But it's funny because, to them, they're just going through business like normal. And it's like, you start sitting and think, you're like, all right, yeah, this is like any other locker room I've ever been in. And after like the first couple of days, you're just like, yeah, this is just work. I come here to do business. And that's weird that it becomes normal that you're in the locker room with all them guys, to be honest. But so to me, I thought that was unique how it just kind of turned, but it is what it is. It's business. You're here to do your job and get it done. Training camp. So my experience, because I was like I said, I was a undrafted, the old 8th rounder. I started off as practice squad. Mm-hmm. Until I ended up working my way up towards the end of the year and then in the Super Bowl and stuff like that. But before that, I always had people say, it's like I coaches always say, like, hey, the more you can do, the more valuable you are. So, like I said, I played tight end in high school and defensive end. So they had Gronk Hernandez, mm-hmm. and then they had a practice squad guy, was their only like tight ends they had at the time. So when they wanted to run 2 tight end sets, they did have someone earlier, but they ended up getting hurt. They traded one. They drafted one who ended up getting picked up later, and I think someone ended up getting hurt. So they really just had 3. And this is maybe week like 5 of the season, so it's still pretty early. And I remember, this scout team coach ended up going. His name was George Gossi. He ended up going, all right, can anyone run tight end? And I'm like, well, I did it in high school. Like, the more you can do, the more valuable. So I kind of raised my hand. I was like, yeah, I can do it. So I started running second team tight end. I mean, all you're doing is reading the card. It's pretty easy. So I guess what started to happen was Ryan Mount ended up throwing me the ball a lot, and I was catching everything, and I was doing pretty good at it. Now, meanwhile, the funny part is I ended up starting to work my way up to second on defensive end roster for New England. So I'm actually doing defensive end reps while I would actually come over and then start doing some tight end scout team reps. So I actually remember the week of the Super Bowl, I ended up working my way up to the second defensive end spot. I was actually behind Ninkovich, and I'll never forget it. I ended up getting George Gossi, the scout team guy, he ended up being the tight ends coach next year. I think this was a large part of why I ended up moving to tight ends also. But he ended up getting like yelled at by Belichick because I was running scout team reps and they wanted me to start doing defensive reps. Wow. And then, Bill obviously yelled at me first too, which the defense is, you need to be doing this. I'm like, I didn't hear him call because I was running reps over here. Obviously, I would have not have done scout team reps versus regular team reps.
Yeah.
But he ended up yelling at him. He goes, look, he can only do reps from here to here. The rest, give him one play off, because I used to run 5 straight reps and then go straight to 5 defensive reps. He goes, all right, he does 4 reps. He gets 1 play off. So do all your double tight end reps, the first 4, and then after that, we'll go to everything else, because he goes, he needs to get his defensive reps. So because I ended up getting activated the day of the Super Bowl. So I floated up and down the last 2 weeks of the season. I was active, and then I bumped back down for playoffs, but then bumped back up for Super Bowl. So that was kind of my interesting story. But then, like I said, he ended up becoming the tight ends coach the next year. And I ended up getting a call, I think it was March. It might have been March. So we've been home. I was at school again training, and it was my defensive line coach was Pepper Johnson at the time. And I get this coach, and it sounded nothing like Pep. And I'm like, who is this? Like, who? And they're like, yeah, it's your new. He's like, what do you think about playing tight end? I go, who's this? Is kind of what I said. He goes, it's your new coach. I go, what do you mean? He goes, and he said his name. It was George. He said, yeah, I'm George Gossi. He's like, we're going to move you to tight end. What do you think about that? I go, as long as I'm still on the team, I don't care what position I play. It's kind of what my answer was. I'm like, yeah, I'm fine with it. He's like, all right, good. He says, we're going to move it. So that's how I ended up. It was after, it's funny because I'm thinking, I started dressing the last couple of weeks of the season and then the Super Bowl. Plus I'll get a full spring, and then I can go into camp. I'll know the defense a lot better. I'll go in and, I can really get, grinding on defense. Instead, I get a call, hey, you're moving to tight end. So it kind of like shifted all that momentum I had. Like, all right, I've been working, defense this whole year. Now it's like, I got to learn how to play tight end again because I haven't done it since high school. And it's significantly different in the NFL than it is in high school. So, you go from, I was the biggest guy in high school blocking people was no problem to being, everyone you're blocking is pretty much going to be bigger than you. Cause I ended up losing like 10 pounds to get down to 255. And, your lightest DNs are 260, 265. So, and that's if you don't have to go down and block a tackle who's 300. So became unique trying to learn how to play tight end again versus, obviously I haven't done it since high school. So.
Wow, another awesome story. And there's been so many gems in there. It's incredible. Yeah. I want to go back. I know that you've been playing football since you were in first grade. So by the time you get to high school, are you thinking in your mind, are you visualizing, I'm going to play with these guys. I'm going to play with Tom Brady someday. Or are you just thinking, I want to go pro, even that? That's my first question. I'm asking a second one too after is, how did it feel to put on the whole outfit and be activated on Super Bowl?
So for the first one, so we'll go to the first question first. So for she got kicked out, it looks like.
Okay. I guess you can just keep going. I'll just. Oh, there she is.
Is she coming back in?
Yeah, she's coming.
I'm gonna wait a second. Okay. No, it's fine. I'll wait a second for her.
I'm sorry. I don't know what happened.
What happened there?
Got kicked out.
I got kicked out.
The old Zoom.
So my question is that how did it feel to be activated on the Super Bowl, on the day of the Super Bowl, and putting on your whole uniform? And then my other question was, did you ever envision who you would be playing with? Did you have goals or mindset of that? No.
So I'll go to the first one. I'll go to playing question first. I just knew I always wanted to, it's always a dream of mine. Hey, I want to play in the NFL. Didn't care who for what. Growing up where I grew up, everyone hated Dallas. I remember saying like I would. I still hate Dallas, but
Dallas is big fan right there.
And I was like, I wouldn't care as long as I'm playing. So to me, it just, I didn't care who I play with or, it wasn't just I wanted to play. And
Yeah.
I remember even as a kid, I always put, what do you want to do when you grow up? It's like you put that, like, I want to play football in there. You always hear people like, oh, that's great, but maybe you should also, always tell you, like, maybe you should also come up with something else. And I'm like, yeah, I'll think of that if football doesn't work. It's kind of I always told
Yeah.
people after. But so yeah, and then you don't really think about, like, to me, like, the whole shock thing when the first couple of days, but then after that, I'm not, you're so busy. I wouldn't think about what any other team was doing
Yeah.
or what. You're just like, hey, this is who we got, and let's just not until that week, until you're scouting them on tape, you don't think about any
Yeah.
of that. So to me, it was just, I didn't care who I played with. I just wanted to play. So for me, like I said, my experience was unique in that I bumped up and down from practice squad and active a decent amount of times that year. So there was actually a guy on the team, they did like an ESPN. He got cut like 25, or he had like 25 or 30 different transactions because he was literally every week he was a practice guy. He would get bumped up. So that's a transact. And then to bring him back down to practice, you have to actually cut him. You have to clear waivers.
Wow.
So he had like 30. I was at like 7. So like I had gotten cut, and then I got picked back up on practice. Then I got re-signed on active. So this happened a couple of times for me as well. So I kind of knew what the process was going into that Super Bowl week. You start, Monday you come in the day after, and after a game, it's really easy, kind of just like walk through just to get the blood flowing, kind of help you heal. Tuesday is always the day off. So you had the day off. Wednesday would be like your full pad practice or your hardest, most physical practice of the week.
Yeah.
I sometimes would get reps then if I was going to play. Now by Thursday, you would have, it's either like uppers or just helmets, depending, later in the year to obviously just do lighter practices.
Yeah.
But if I was still practicing by Thursday or Friday, I had a really good idea that I was going to get bumped up for that week in practice. Now, if I wasn't practicing, especially that Thursday, then obviously I knew I was just going to stay on practice that week.
Yeah.
Well, during that week of the Super Bowl, I was practicing, and it was Friday, and I was still getting reps. And I remember I said something to my dad. I'm like, yeah, man, I'm still practicing. Like, I think I'm going to get activated for the Super Bowl. And he's like, what? I was like, yeah, I think so, but I'm not like 100% sure. So
What?
Coach Belichick ended up telling me, when did he tell me? Friday. It was. So I told him Thursday. My dad told Thursday I was still practicing. I'm practicing. It usually means now I practiced Thursday before, then not Friday, which meant I didn't get bumped. But I was like, there's still a chance I could get activated. Well, Friday after practice, I had still done reps, and Belichick came up to me after the game, or after the practice, and said, hey, look, I just want to let you know we're going to activate you for the game Sunday. He goes, but we don't have to break it to the media yet. So if I hear anything, and he used to always say like my space, or he used to say like a face space or my book or something like that. He would always mess him up. and if it comes out in the media, he goes, I don't know, cutting your ass so fast you won't say it. So I'm like, all right. So I didn't say anything. I actually remember telling my dad, I was like, look, he told me, because I had told him the day before that I thought it was. I was like, yeah, he told me I am, but I was like, you can't say anything. I was like, don't tell anyone. Don't even tell Bob, because there's too many people. Just wait till Saturday when it comes out. And he goes, okay. So I think Saturday we ended up having it's usually the walkthrough in the morning, and then you have like a lot of time off. Well, they take pictures, and they ended up taking pictures in the Super Bowl. So they do like the whole roster, and then they end up doing 53-man roster pictures. And I hopped in the pictures, and Belichick had like an assistant who I guess didn't know at the time, but he was like, no, it's only for active. And Bill's like, yeah, he's allowed in it. So ended up
the ultimate media photo.
Well, because then it was only just us. So like no media, so media didn't know about it. It was just like a team picture at the time. But then, so technically there was 54 in the picture we took, because now they didn't actually release it, so they didn't even cut the person. So they actually had to cut the person the day of the Super Bowl, which ended up being Tyquan Underwood, or the day before Super Bowl, ended up being Tyquan Underwood, a guy I played with at Rutgers. So that kind of stuck. Now the only thing is so he wasn't like completely cut. Like they even told him like, yeah, obviously you can come back home with us, but yeah, I think the only thing, and I never even asked him this, and I was always kind of curious, but I don't think he could watch the game at the stadium because technically he wasn't on the team. He had to clear waivers.
Wow.
He had to wait for the 40. I don't know if he had to watch the game in the hotel, but he obviously was able to fly with us and all stuff like that after. So I'm not sure. He might have been able to watch it on the sideline in like street clothes, just get them on, kind of like, hey, watch it. But that part I was not sure about. But I didn't realize it till that day we're doing the breakfast, or we did like a lunch after the pictures or whatever it was. And one of the guys who was like, so you have 53, but you don't dress full 53. This is one of the guys who wouldn't dress all the time. And he was like, wait, so that means someone's got to get cut. And he was like, panicking, that could be me. And I'm like, I have no, he was asking me like, do you know? I'm like, I just found out I was getting activated. I have no clue who's going to end up getting cut before the game.
Yeah.
Ended up not, like I said, it wasn't him, it was someone else. But I remember it. And everyone kind of came at Belichick for that. Like, oh, he cut a guy the day before. It's kind of, wasn't like we left him out in Indianapolis. Like, obviously he could have, if he was able to come, he would have got a ring if we won, all that stuff. It wasn't like, But so yeah, that was my Super Bowl and knowing I was getting activated experience. I do remember walking out. It was absolutely amazing. When I do the kickoff, I was in 2 Super Bowls, and next year I was in it with Baltimore. It's crazy, like when they do the kickoff and like the lights start flashing, like literally they could have it dim and all the people like take pictures. Like once the opening kick, it could literally light the whole. It's incredible how like. It's just something else. And then kind of after that, it's like every other game, just settles back down. It is what it is. It's a game. So
that's amazing. That is so cool.
You just keep telling us some great stories over here, Alec.
I'm in awe.
So that was another unique Super Bowl experience, I guess.
That's awesome. Yeah. Speaking of Super Bowl, obviously the next year you won the championship with the Baltimore Ravens. Take me through that experience, going from a great organization to another one, because John Harbaugh, he doesn't get enough credit how good of a coach he is. He is a heck of a coach, and you got to play with Bill Belichick, Greg Schiano, and John Harbaugh, 3 legendary coaches in my opinion. And so, what was it like going from the Patriots to the Ravens? You played with Joe Flacco, Ray Rice, Michael Orr, Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs, Ed Dixon. I can go on and on. So, what was it like playing for that team too? And take us through the Super Bowl run against the 49ers. Yeah,
so I actually had played. So it's funny because Joe Flacco grew up in the area. So it's funny. Isaac Redman actually had played against him in high school, and then he was with the Steelers, and Joe was in Baltimore. So it's funny they both ended up playing each other in the NFL as well. But yeah, it's funny to go from 2 different experiences and still have. It wasn't like you're on, at the time the Browns couldn't find a way to win. It wasn't like, or Detroit, these teams that consistently lost games each week. You go from one winning team to the next winning team. We actually had the year before when I was in New England, we actually had beaten Baltimore in the AFC Championship game up in New England by, Baltimore missing a field goal. And the next year, I'm in New England. I'm in Foxborough again, and I'm on Baltimore, and we end up beating the Patriots in the AFC Championship game. So it's, it's kind of, just to explain how good both those teams were at that time. But it was very unique experiences. They are 2 completely different coaches, Belichick and Harbaugh. I can't believe you guys haven't asked this, but I'll answer it anyway first. That I did like Belichick better.
Oh, wow.
A lot of people usually think it's the other way around. I did not like Harbaugh that much just because he lied. So
okay.
Wow.
My preseason experience was horrible in Baltimore. I never got an opportunity to play. And he would always tell me, like, yeah, I'd ask, we're going to play. And he kind of like, yeah, and never did. Whereas Belichick, I played a ton. I was playing second quarter only for a lot of it. So he gave me plenty of opportunity to play, which was, amazing.
Yeah.
And like I said, Bill had cut me, brought me up to active multiple times. And every time he's just honest. He goes, hey, look, I remember my first time I got cut. He goes, hey, look, we really like you. We're going to bring you back. It's just a numbers game right now. So we have numbers on offensive line. We need more than we do on defense. He goes, so, give us a week or 2 back. If someone doesn't pick you up, we're bringing you back here. It was like a week later, I get a call and I was back in New England, So, for Bill, the honesty I think helped for Bill, obviously for Belichick, the way how honest he was. Whereas Harbaugh was like, oh yeah, you're going to play. And then like, I never played. He goes, oh yeah, we really like you. And then like then I ended up getting cut. So that was kind of rubbed me the wrong way with Harbaugh.
Wow.
I think he was just trying to be too nice. We're in that business. Honesty is what you want.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, he's a great coach. So obviously, the way they both run practices, you can tell that's why both of his programs are going to be successful. I've heard it from people that played elsewhere, and like these practices obviously are harder than places they've been where they're not as successful. And kind of it's the reason why those two programs are very successful. So.
Yeah, I didn't expect that from him. I didn't.
Yeah, well, I could. Everyone always says that because he comes off and he's very nice. Where Bill's just blunt and how dry he is. But I always tell people I respected Belichick just because honestly it was key. In the business where you get cut day to day, you want honesty. You don't want someone to lie to you.
Yeah.
So it's kind of my little bit bad experience with Harbaugh, but he's successful, so it is what it is.
And you're a success. So I'd like to ask you this. You're a successful financial expert, advisor. What did it feel like when something that you've put so much passion into for so long, when it was time to hang up the cleats? But you didn't hang them up fully because you coach still. But how did that feel?
So, I mean, yeah. So I actually didn't. So for the first year after I was working out, I did a workout in Canada. Didn't really like it as much. Then I kind of was just like in limbo, just kind of, hoping to get picked up, but nothing ever really happened or panned out. So I was an econ major at Rutgers and always knew I wanted to get into the business of financial advisor. Ended up being a football guy who ended up getting me in. It's funny that's how it happened.
Cool.
This guy was a big football guy, and he always was asking, my cousin had a restaurant next door to this office, and he goes, yeah, what's your cousin doing now? Because I had met him before, and just showed when I was playing, and I was like, yeah, I was an econ major. He goes, oh yeah. And so he's like, he had called me after. He's like, you want to? I guess my cousin gave him my number. This guy's Dave Maxwell. He was advisor at the time, or Edward Jones. And he's like, yeah. So he gave me, I ended up giving him a call, and he's like, yeah, come work with me. He's got to pass some tests. So that's how I got into, I had to obviously pass the securities license and tests and all that stuff, and that's how I became an advisor. But I don't do too much football now. I actually didn't watch football for like a full year outside of when I got cut. Because every time I did, I would look at someone and be like, oh, I think I'm better than that guy. And I'm not when he's playing. So it was like, I was a little spiteful, I guess. But But then now, like I said, I obviously football, I love it. So I'm back at it. I don't coach football now. It's actually wrestling I coach, believe it or not.
Oh, you coach wrestling now. Okay.
Yeah, I went back to wrestling. It's a little bit easier. Football is, I wouldn't mind it. It's just the time it's too much more time. Whereas,
but you do the camps with the kids.
Yeah, I'll do all that.
Coaching,
yeah, them things. And I did want to start going into where I can do maybe like a day. But it's just the time frame of football is long. Plus, like I said, me and my wife, both of our families we're always known to go down the shore. If I had to tell her now that I was in camp for a month and she could, I think she wouldn't be too happy with me. But
and you got the new babe.
And I had the baby stuff. So like I said, just training camp alone, there's a couple of weeks of all days. I couldn't do that with work now anyway. But I do love football. Like I said, I wouldn't mind coming in and doing like a day here and there and stuff. And I thought about doing stuff like that, but it's just, it's hard. Like I said, still with work, obviously have to work. So wrestling makes it a little easier. I can always kind of box my schedule around the wrestling season. And when matches start, they're like every other day and they're not till 7 at night. So I can work a full day and then go to a match. So just made it easier with wrestling kind of versus football. It's kind of what the decision was, how I made my decision of which one to continuously coach. So
interesting.
Yeah, that's great. That's great because you're great at motivating others and it, like you said, it's a numbers game. So, to take it personally, we can't take it personally, but it's to some people, it's almost like a death. You know what I mean? Like a lot of guys have told us it's not for long, but for success like yourself, I just wanted to see how you felt. And it's interesting because I have heard of players that didn't want to watch it at all because you want to be there and it's hard.
Yeah. Yep. I was totally spiteful for it for the first year. I mean, even the second year I started watching it, like I always would still watch Rutgers games because obviously, but like NFL, I didn't watch. My boys come over watch a game, and I'm just kind of sitting there like, yeah, whatever. So it was just like, I was watching it again. Like I said, spiteful of people that are playing. So
that's
probably happened for about a year or two, and then I, maybe halfway through the second year, started watching a couple more games and stuff like that. But now Hey, like I said, I've always loved football the most. So I watch it. I watch hours of games from Saturdays on through, on the Sundays now. But yeah, it was like I said, it was a little spiteful towards it. But back to the coaching thing. That's another reason why I wanted to do it. You've done competitions your whole life, and then you just say, hey, well, now it's like just the competitive nature of, to me, coaching kind of gives you like a little bit of that. Plus, I still wrestle around with the kids, so like,
Yeah.
to me, it's like that competition thing again. It kind of gives you something, because your whole life you've done competition. Now, yeah,
Yes.
work, but it's a little different than like a physical competition as of football, wrestling, or whatever.
Oh,
But
that's
so
awesome.
that's
And you
kind of
will
why.
coach your son too
Oh, no, definitely.
someday.
Someday.
Will your wife allow him to play football?
Oh yeah, I don't think she has a problem with it. So my only thing is I let him play let him choose what he wants. Obviously, just based off of my interests, he'll be heavily influenced because I'll be watching. I still watch a ton of football, watch a ton of wrestling, and watch a ton of baseball. So he will obviously get influenced by what I watch because but he can play whatever sports he wants. It's totally his decision. The influence may be there just naturally, not purposely, I guess is the best.
Yes,
way.
and she had him in the stroller on the field, right from the beginning. So
Yeah. So he's what now? He's almost 10 months now. So
that's exciting. Little
or sorry,
COVID baby.
yeah. Well, I tell people, I was like, look, before the lockdown, he was a February guy.
Okay.
Before the lockdown started, I don't want to be known as a COVID baby.
Yeah.
Okay. He's not. Take it back.
He's a lockout
Because
baby.
there's been that COVID baby bump.
Yeah.
Yes.
Baby boom. I
He's
guess.
a football baby.
Yeah, football.
Yeah, there you go.
Actually he's called a pre-lockout baby.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you though, what's it like now after going through your career and overcoming a lot of adversity and not and getting cut so many times, but coming back and getting the same opportunities to come back and so what's it like and winning a Super Bowl obviously with the Ravens and now sharing your career with these kids? Obviously, we saw what you guys did in Paulsboro, which is amazing. Kudos to you guys. And so what's it like sharing your story to these kids and the kids you work with in wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is good to hear because it's crazy. You see stuff and it's a small, like I said, little local town. Not many people get out of it, and it's good to hear from people that in town that were able to get out. So like I said, shout out to Ross and Redmond for running that camp. It's a great camp. It's a good turnout. Like Ross graduated with my dad, and he was one, so even to look back at Paulsboro, and then he went on to
That's awesome.
Obviously a huge career. Yeah, had a huge career in the NFL, and then now with coaching. So, it's been a really, we're really fortunate kind of to have the group of people we do in our town. Such a small town, like I said, we graduate like 100 kids a year now, or under that. To have like that little, that small of a school, but have that successful of a school in football. So it's really a good thing to, kind of see that and kind of give back to the kids. It's always, obviously trying to help out as much as possible is a great thing. So.
So speaking of coaching, I want to ask you, I got an opportunity to be a coach for soccer. So what advice you would give someone that has no coaching experience, but have knowledge of sports?
What age group? It makes a
We
big
don't know the age group yet, but I'm looking like it's looking like maybe 5 to 8, 9 range, I think.
What advice? Patience. That'll be the first thing I give you, especially with even with high school. So I purposely wanted to deal with high school or older, but yeah, younger kids, definitely patience. That'd be the key. Trust me. You'll see, because they have so many things going on that they'll be super distracted with everything. Just have patience.
Alex, what is your key to getting ready for a game or a wrestling match? Is there any kind of like workouts or mindset or any kind of routine?
I used to always like listening to music. Pretty much, that was about it. And then I would just sit and think, depending on obviously how close the game was. Obviously in football, when you get to like college and the NFL, they put you up in a hotel before. So you're just watching, even if it's a home game, home or away game, you're just sitting there, you're in a hotel, you're eating, you're watching film, you're going meetings. So you're pretty much constantly, they have your head wrapped around the game and the game you're about to have. But for me, when it came to like game time, I did always like to go out a little early, run around, stretch, kind of feel the air type deal. Obviously if it got colder out, and then after that, I just kind of sat in, got ready, physically ready, whatever needed to get done, and music until game time pretty much is how I always did it. So.
Wow.
Well, that's interesting. So did they send you film like remotely? Like, so you're in the hotel room and you're watching film too? Like on phones or whatever?
You could go to the meeting rooms and watch whatever you wanted to, so you can just go in, log on. So they have the computers,
Okay.
where you just log in, you can go. Now it's a little bit different. When I was in New England, they still had a paper, like a folder, like a binder with your playbook. Now when I went to Baltimore, now everything's on a tablet or an iPad.
Okay.
So you can watch film right there. So you could pick what you want to watch. Now it's probably even better now than it was then, but you can pick what you want to watch, and you don't even have to go to the meeting rooms. You can watch it all on your tablet. So
that's
you can
amazing.
Watch games, plays, cut ups, and they break everything down. So when you watch film, so you can watch if you're on defense, you can watch third and long, third and short yardage, goal line, whatever it may be. They even break down third down, and then third and 12 plus, or third and 10, then they'll break it down to third to 8 to 10, they'll break it 5 to 8, and then they break everything. They have guys that do all that, so you can pretty much watch any play you want to watch. And second, they'll have second and ones broken down, because that could be a tendency of a team either wants to go for the first down or throw for a shot or deep play. So they break down a whole whatever you want to watch, they'll have a category for it, and you just download it now, I guess, onto the tablet and watch it, which is incredible. Back when I did it, you had to go back onto the computer and put on the projector and do all that. But even when I was at Rutgers, they had a channel where they would just loop games. So they would get a channel in the hotel and just have they would loop different games that the team played, and then you could also go in and watch your own film and stuff like that. So they had multiple ways. They gave you every opportunity you needed to watch film.
That's key. That's clutch. Yeah. That's awesome.
Plus you did it during your meetings also. So you had meetings. Reminded to go, and you would do a walkthrough here and there depending on what time the game was on Saturday or Sunday. So
So before we get to the last two things here, I want to ask you real quick about Rutgers. What do you think, Greg Schiano, with him coming back, do you think we can take the next level to go into the playoffs?
To get into the playoffs, obviously that's tough. It's 4 teams, right? I do think it's a really good possibility of him doing really well there, successful, going to bowl games. He did that obviously right before he had left. I think he still has a great opportunity of doing all that. Hopefully, I mean, that's the goal, right? Is to get to the playoff, because then you're in the big dance. So I would like to say but I guess time will tell. So and he like I said, you already see how his recruiting class is going. He's got a top 10 recruiting class. I mean, he is probably the best recruiter I had out of all the schools that recruited me. So hopefully we'll see. I'll be at the games. That's all I know. Hopefully the results are good.
Yeah. So the last two things here before we let you go, and our team is part of this foundation. It's called the Hugh Jackson Foundation. Former NFL coach. Now he's offensive coordinator at Tennessee State with Eddie George. We're trying to help him prevent human trafficking, making sure the community stays safe and the kids stay safe. So we'll send it to you and your wife so you guys can check it out.
All right, yeah. Thank you.
And the last thing, thank you. And the last thing here, would you like to say anything to all the nurses, doctors, and essential workers right now?
Oh, those guys, obviously, this whole thing has been insane, right? So, for them, obviously wish them all the best. Hope they stay healthy, and obviously we're grateful to have them to do their job. So thank you.
Yeah. Kia, you want to close it out today? I'll let you close it out.
No, you go ahead, because I don't remember what episode number it is.
All right, so there it is. That wraps up episode 890 with former NFL defensive end and Rutgers defensive end Alex Silvestro. He won the Super Bowl with the Baltimore Ravens, also played with the Patriots, and now he's a wrestling coach, financial advisor. Go check him out on all social media formats. We had the pleasure of meeting him in person at a football event in Paulsboro High School. But thank you again, Alex, for joining the show. It's truly an honor. We'd like to have you back on the show at some point down the line so you can meet the full team. But keep up the great work. And your family is such an inspiration, and stay safe.
Thank you for having me, and same to you. Have a great weekend and stay safe.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Take care, guys. Thank you.